Nick McBride is the member for Mackillop. Nick, you're actually not far from this fireground. Can you just give us a bit of an eyewitness account of what's happening there at Lucindale near this Coles bushfire?
So, first of all, this fire's been going now for 3 days. This is the third day. Started by some machinery in amongst forestry-type operations. And look, this is the really difficult thing is we've got a major fire in a forestry resource and native vegetation. We've got warm, dry weather. We've had a warm, dry summer and maybe a cool, dry spring. And there's a fair amount of fuel around, and this fire is, let's say, very hard to get to the crux of it, to put it out by the authorities and all that are working on it. So what happened yesterday is it jumped the containment lines. We've had winds in a southeasterly direction of around 30 or 40 kilometres an hour, and embers from this forest are leaving the fire and travelling 4 to 6 kilometres beyond the breaks, beyond the fire, and then starting up new spot fires out into pastures and paddocks. And this is what happened yesterday, and now that'll be a major concern again for today. I've just driven past it in the last 30 minutes or 20 minutes. I've just seen 2 aeroplanes fly over, and then at the same time, looking south from where I was travelling, there's a small amount of smoke again billowing from this fire area, and I've no doubt that those planes were going there to put water on this flare-up. And then no doubt this is the sort of thing that they're going to be fighting all day today, and it'll certainly, with the conditions, getting over 30 degrees, dry, fairly strongish winds, not gale force, but just strong to make it difficult. It's certainly going to push the authorities. And may I just say this, Ricky, that a big thank you to all the volunteers, CFS volunteers, spending the time out there, because it's been like 24 hours a day for the last 3 days that they've had to man, watch and monitor this, and I don't think it's going to end soon until we see some decent rain.
And I know you've had some grizzles in the past about cross-border issues in some respects, but good to see some cross-border cooperation when it comes to the Victorian CFA coming to help out with this one.
Oh, look, all the resources from anywhere in this sort of activity are welcome. We've had a couple of fires this year already. We had a major fire there around the Pelagilo area on our border, started in South Australia. There was great cooperation there between both South Australian and Victorian authorities. And this fire is actually, probably would be 30, 40, 50 kilometres from the border. Look, it's wonderful to see the other jurisdictions like Victoria and CFA coming over to assist, because this is quite, well, I have to say, it's almost a huge concern. It hasn't burnt much yet, about 3,000 hectares. But, if it did get away with these conditions, it could be like the fires that we've seen over the last couple of years at Lucindale Blackford Fire and the Kallira Fire, where they burnt in excess of 15,000 hectares, and I think the Kallira one was around 25,000 hectares. So that's their main goal, is to contain what's going on there and try to maintain the fire to stay within the bounds that it is now.
Okay, well, look, Peter Malinauskas, the Opposition Leader, I understand he's flown down to the southeast to talk about health issues. Labor seems to be seizing on comments you've made about the state of health services. Are they trying to verbal your position to make it sound a little bit more critical of the government than it is?
Look, I think the way that this is best put, when the interview was had with yesterday with a journalist, was on 2 fronts. One is that, the question was asked, do I welcome investment into the health in the regions by the Labor Party? And the answer is yes, I do want to see investments into our health and into the regions of South Australia, because I think we can do it even better than what they perhaps did over 16 years. But not only that, we can do better even as our first term, that we can spend more in our regions looking after the regional infrastructure and services it require. So in that sense, when it was asked that question about what the Labor Party up to, all my points are is I welcome them to acknowledge that it does need resources, it does need the spotlight to be put on it, and I'm hoping that now the Labor Party starts the ball running in this area, that the Liberal Marshall government come along and also not only match it, but also emphasise that any sort of investment we can make into the regional health area will be welcome by all the constituents of the Limestone Coast, and particularly here in Mackillop, because, I think we've got a bit of catch-up to play here, Ricky.
Well, just speaking of health services, there seems to be a little bit of discord regarding the Teys processing plant at Naracoorte and what advice SA Health gave them, and then Woolworth's position in relation to them. It's made a significant disruption in the beef processing front, as I can tell here in South Australia. What's your position on how this has been handled regarding the processor there?
So I did get involved in this quite early on because I saw, first of all, and acknowledged that this was really started by the New Year, Christmas party and events of a massive outbreak of COVID in amongst the Limestone Coast. And so I'll pinpoint Robe. From Robe, the disease seemed to spread right out throughout the Limestone Coast to all the towns, Mount Gambier, Naracoorte and others. Naracoorte Teys, the meatworks, the abattoir there, had been and was working with SA Health to make sure that their operations were being run to the best of their ability to manage COVID, and they were testing all their employees on a daily or regular basis. And the best way to describe this, Ricky, is that they were the canary in the coal mine by, testing their workers like they were. And I'd have to say that, Teys and their meat workers and the works there did not bring COVID to Naracoorte. It's actually Naracoorte and the community brought the disease to their business. And I thought that's one thing I think that's really been lost and missed here. The second point is once the Teys recognised they had this problem, they worked with SA Health as best and as close as they could. They needed to sort of try and work through the process by keeping their staff on board, by keep the processing going, keep their food chains working, so that because they are an essential service. And yes, it's been made to look like that they've requested workers to work with the disease if they're able. And I think that it's been used in perhaps a mischievous way that SA Health and Teys have done the wrong thing here, whereas I think they were trying to do the right thing. And the word I'd use here, I think that's being missed, and the mining industry are now taking this up, Ricky, is that they are trying to, let's say, encourage workers who are either close contacts or perhaps have gone through the COVID virus, that if they are fit for work and they're no longer contagious, then why can't they turn up for work? And I think that's the message that's been lost in all this. And I think that then Woolworths perhaps had to do what they did, trying to protect their integrity of their business, that they weren't going to be picking up contaminated meat, for example, which I don't think there's much chance of that. Secondly, that they weren't, using a works that were making workers work when they were perhaps contagious with the virus and or not fit for work purposes. And I don't think that was ever the case. And look, I think it's really unfortunate the way this message has worked, but I'm hoping, and Teys are ever so grateful, not only that they were working well with SA Health and the advice they got, and now they're back on track and working with Woolworths, and they're working through this virus, like all the businesses around South Australia are going to have to as this COVID virus works through our community.
Well, Nick McBride, appreciate you just giving us a few moments of your time. Much appreciated, and we do hope that fire just is brought under control fairly quickly. So thanks again for your time today.
As always, Ricky, a pleasure.